More hungries, but more food too.
Melanie, start us off.
After hearing an alarm ring outside her cell, a girl named Melanie quickly removes the pictures on the wall and puts on her uniform. She then sits in a chair and waits for someone to open the door. Suddenly, two soldiers, Kieran and Devani, enter the room and point their guns at her. Melanie doesn't look scared, and as she greets them, Kieran drops his gun and goes to strap her head, hands, and legs to the chair. After this, he wheels her out of the room, and Melanie sees the other children in the facility also being taken out of their rooms. Melanie then sees the leader of the soldiers, Sergeant Parks, standing in the hallway, and she greets him. Parks doesn't respond to her, but as he notices that Kieran is leaning on her wheelchair, he orders the soldier to keep his distance. Kieran does just this, and after a while, he takes Melanie to her class. When she arrives, a doctor named Selkirk enters the classroom to start the morning lesson on the periodic table. As she asks the kids a few questions related to the topic, some of them struggle to answer them well, but Melanie accurately responds to them.
Who knows the numbers?
After a while, a soldier named Helen, who is in charge of educating the kids, enters the classroom. Melanie looks happy to see her, and she asks how Helen is doing. Helen says she's fine, and she also tells Selkirk that she's done with her assignment and is ready to continue the class. Following this, Selkirk leaves the class, and as Helen talks about continuing from where the doctor stopped, Melanie asks if she can tell them a story instead. Helen says she could, but that she's worried one of them might tell a senior doctor named Caldwell about it. One of the boys in the class says they won't tell Caldwell anything, and Helen agrees to continue her last story about Greek myth. She then talks about a Greek woman named Pandora and how she overcame her problems by having hope. Helen mentions that hope is a good thing that makes it easy for people to stand all the bad things in the world. Suddenly, Melanie asks if there's anything bad at the facility. Helen looks sad as she hears this, but she says there's nothing bad there.
You're very welcome, Mr. Steno.
Shortly after, the kids are taken back to their rooms, and as two soldiers drop Melanie off, they look scared of her even though she just greets them goodnight. After they leave, Melanie gets out of the chair and sits on her bed. A few hours later, Melanie gets her food delivered to her room, and as she picks it up, it turns out that the bowl contains worms. Melanie doesn't seem to have a problem with it, and she eats the worms. The next morning, Melanie hears footsteps in the hallway and stands in front of her door to see who it is. Almost immediately, she discovers that it's Caldwell, who has come to inspect the kids for a research she's conducting. As Caldwell sees her, she tells her to solve a puzzle, but Melanie struggles to come up with the answer. She eventually says she'll have to think about it later, and Caldwell starts writing something in her notebook. As Melanie asks about it, Caldwell mentions that she's just filling a section for subject responses. She then says that, based on her observation, the jury is still out on Melanie.
13.
Following this, Caldwell tells Melanie to give her a number from 0 to 20, and as she says 13, the doctor thanks her and walks away. After a while, the soldiers come over to take the kids out to their class. As she leaves the room, Melanie notices that a boy named Kenny, who is in room 13, is not among those being taken to the class. She finds this surprising and asks the soldiers about Kenny, but they just ignore her. During Helen's class that day, she notices that the students look moody, so she asks what's wrong. Melanie then asks about Kenny, and Helen says he won't be with them for the day. The kids don't get this, but to distract them, Helen gives them a classwork to write a story about anything. After a while, Helen asks if anyone would like to read their story to the class, and Melanie volunteers to go first.
Only the ones you've told us.
She then narrates a story about a young girl who saved a beautiful woman from getting killed by a monster. Helen gets emotional as she hears the story, and Melanie apologizes because she thinks she did something wrong. As she asks if she should write another one, Helen goes close to her and touches her head. Suddenly, Parks enters the class and scolds Helen for touching Melanie. Helen says it's nothing serious, but Parks thinks she could have gotten hurt. He then spits on his palm and rubs it on his arm before placing it in front of one of the kids in the class. Helen says he doesn't have to do it, but Parks doesn't listen to her. Almost immediately, the student starts violently clapping clashing his teeth together while looking at Park's arm. As some other kids also start doing the same thing, Helen tells him to stop, and he says that he hopes she now understands his point that the students aren't normal. After the class ends, Melanie is taken to her room.
No, I don't think that.
And as she sees Parks just by the door, she says that if she had a box full of evil things, she would lock him inside. Parks jokes that he won't let her get a box, but Melanie says he's just jealous that Helen likes her and not him. Parks seems pissed by this, and instead of getting his soldiers to unstrap Melanie from the chair, he tells them to leave her like that. A while later, Helen goes to the section of the facility where the kids are being held. She then looks inside Melanie's room and sees that she's still strapped to her chair. Helen calls on any soldier around to come and provide backup for her before she enters the room, but no one hears her. She then decides to enter the room alone to help Melanie get out of the chair. As she unstraps Melanie, Helen says she knows that Parks was the one who left her like that. Suddenly, Melanie starts getting the urge to bite Helen, so she quickly tells her teacher to leave the room. Just as Melanie tries to attack her because she can't control what's happening to her, Helen quickly leaves the room and closes the door before she starts applying a blocker gel on her face to mask her scent.
I think I know who it might have been.
Later that night, Melanie gets stable, and as Caldwell walks through the hallway, she sees the blocker gel on the floor. She then asks Melanie for the person who came to see her earlier. Melanie refuses to say anything because she doesn't want to get Helen in trouble, but Caldwell says she knows who it might have been. She then tells Melanie to give her a random number, and she says 4. Caldwell seems shocked by this, and as she walks away, it turns out that Melanie's room number is 4. The next day, the kids are taken out of their rooms to head to their classroom, but no one comes for Melanie. As she wonders what's wrong, Parks shows up to wheel her out of the room. Surprisingly, he doesn't take her to class, and as she asks where they're going, he just ignores her. Shortly after, he wheels her out of the facility, and she sees some soldiers shooting at some zombies called Hungries, who are trying to break through the fence. It then turns out that in the present world, most humans have been infected by a fungus, which turns them into Hungries. The facility also happens to be a place where Caldwell is working to develop a cure by conducting tests on a rare group of kids that have the fungus in their systems but seem normal. After a while, Parks wheels Melanie into a lab where Caldwell and Selkirk are working. As he drops her off, Melanie sees a brain inside a jar with the number 13 written on it. This leaves her scared, and she starts wondering if the brain belongs to Kenny because he was the one who stayed in room 13. After she greets the doctor, Selkirk injects Melanie with a sedative, and she passes out. The doctors then strap her to a table, but before they're able to cut her open, Melanie wakes up. As Caldwell tells Selkirk to increase the dosage of the sedative, Helen enters the room and tells them not to hurt Melanie. She says she's tired of letting them hurt the kids in the facility, but Caldwell says they aren't normal.
3 mil, thiopental.
Helen believes Caldwell just needs to talk to the kids for a few minutes to see how normal they are, but the doctor insists that she has to use the kids to develop a cure for the fungus. Helen refuses to let her do this, but Caldwell tells her to drop the fire extinguisher she's holding so they can talk about the situation calmly. As she does this, Caldwell sprays Helen with pepper spray, and she falls to the ground. She then calls on 2 soldiers to take Helen away so she can focus on her work. Just as they do this, Caldwell hears an alarm that indicates that the Hungries have breached the walls of the facility. Selkirk asks if they should postpone the procedure, but Caldwell just tells her to bring down the shutters. While she's doing this, one of the Hungries suddenly breaks the window and bites Selkirk. Caldwell quickly runs to stab the zombie, but injures her hand in the process. As she thinks of what to do next, Caldwell sees Selkirk turning into a zombie, so she runs out of the room and leaves Melanie inside alone. Melanie looks terrified to see Selkirk looking like a zombie, and she tries to free herself from the table. Interestingly, Selkirk doesn't attack Melanie, and it turns out that Hungries can't kill their own people. Following this, Melanie frees herself and runs outside, only to see the soldiers in a chaotic battle with the Hungries, who are running around the facility. Melanie Melanie looks confused as to where to go, but she suddenly sees Helen being dragged by two soldiers. As this gets her pissed, she attacks the soldiers and kills them, after which she passes out. Helen then carries her away, but just as they're about to be attacked by hungries, Parks shows up in a military truck and tells her to come inside. After she quickly enters the truck with Melanie, Parks drives away from the scene, and Helen realizes that Caldwell is inside too.
Please.
A while later, Parks loses the hungries and stops the truck to think about the best strategy to get help from their command base in London called Beacon. Suddenly, Kieran notices that Melanie is inside the truck, and as Parks sees this, he tries to shoot her, but Helen defends her. She also opens the door and tells Melanie to run away, but as she gets out, she sees that she's in the middle of nowhere, so she just sits on the ground. Shortly after, a soldier named Dylan informs Parks that their comms are down and unable to reach Beacon, so the sergeant suggests driving toward the base. Meanwhile, Helen goes to meet Melanie, but she tells her teacher not to come too close to her. She then mentions that she did a bad thing, but Helen says it was a good thing because she saved her life. Melanie still doesn't think it was right, and Helen feels sorry for her. Shortly after, Parks announces that they'll be stocking up on water before heading to London. Helen asks about the kids at the facility, but Parks says they need to assume that everyone there is dead.
No, she's not.
Helen cannot believe this, and as she asks about Melanie, Caldwell says she's still vital to her research. Helen looks pissed and punches her face, but before she does anything else, Parks holds her back. As they leave to find a nearby river where they can get water, Melanie is given a muzzle to put on her face, and she also gets strapped to a chair on top of the truck. Shortly after, they stop near the river and head toward it to fill their bottles with water. While Dylan is covering for them, he hears a strange sound in the nearby bushes and shoots in that direction. Before he and the others realize what's happening, some of the hungries show up in the woods and attack them. Unfortunately, Dylan gets bitten by one of them before Parks kills it. As he then enters the truck, Parks stops Dylan from coming with them because he has been bitten. Dylan looks scared and says he wasn't bitten by the zombie, but as he's about to turn into one, Parks kills him. He then sees Melanie already inside the truck, and he asks why Helen brought her in. Helen says that Melanie is harmless because her hands are cuffed, and she's also wearing a muzzle. However, Parks says she's still dangerous, and that they should be careful around her. After a while, Parks sees that the truck can't move any further, so he suggests walking to the command base. Helen asks why they can't just call Beacon to send a chopper to pick them up, but Parks says that the radio inside the truck can't reach such range, and they'll have to use handhelds when they get close enough. Shortly after, they begin their walk to London, but they eventually stop when they see many hungries blocking the road. Parks says they'll have to move past them silently, but Caldwell seems bothered that the hungries might smell them. Parks says that the blocker gel will make them invisible, but that they just have to be careful not to make any sound to awaken the hungries. Just then, they slowly walk past some of the hungries without making a sound. Suddenly, they hear one of the hungries pushing a baby stroller in the area. Caldwell looks shocked by this because she has never seen the hungries exhibit maternal behavior before, and she goes close to the stroller to block it from moving any further.
Okay.
She then tries to see if there's a baby inside the stroller, but she only finds a rat there. As it makes a sound, some of the hungries wake up, and Parks and Kieran shoot them down. They eventually find a nearby building to hide, and while Parks, Kieran, and Helen go around the place to see if they're alone, Caldwell is left alone with Melanie. Almost immediately, Melanie asks Caldwell what she is, and the doctor explains that she's one of the newborn hungries who ate her way out of her mother's womb. She adds that the newborns are a rare kind of hungries because they can still think well, interact with their environment, and behave like normal people. Melanie says she doesn't want to be a hungry, but Caldwell says it's what she is. Melanie then asks about the vaccine she wants to develop, and Caldwell says it's the focus of her research because she really wants to help people. As she says that she really wants to save everyone,
They ate their way out.
Melanie just stares at her and doesn't say anything. Later that night, Helen sees some new clothes in the building and gives them to Melanie. She then mentions that she'll try to get Melanie enough food to eat the next day. In the morning, Parks and the others realize that the Hungries are now in front of the building they're hiding in. As they wonder how they'll get out without waking them up, Melanie says she can find a way to get it done. Caldwell says she won't allow it because there's no guarantee she'll come back, but Melanie says she will because she wants to be with Helen and Kieran, who have always been nice to her. As she also mentions that she can't tell lies, Helen supports her. Parks doesn't think there's any harm in letting Melanie try to help them, so he gives her the permission to leave. After she changes her clothes, she heads downstairs and walks past the Hungries.
Can I wear my new clothes, please?
She then sees a stray cat and gets a sudden urge to kill it and drink its blood. Following this, she walks around the area and admires the buildings. Shortly after, she enters a nearby house and sees a dog inside. This instantly gives her an idea, and she takes the dog back to the front of the building. Parks and the others are hiding. As the dog barks and runs away, the Hungries follow it, and Parks and the others are able to come out of the building safely. Parks commends Melanie for doing a good job, but he still cuffs her hands. They eventually continue their walk to London, but as they see that the Hungries are on the road again, Parks tells Melanie to head down to help them determine the best route to go through. As she does this, Parks and the others follow her instructions and are able to pass through a route with only a few Hungries. After a while, they see a pile of bodies that have sprouted to form a fungal structure around a pole. As they wonder what it is, Caldwell says it's the next stage of the fungus's life cycle, which involves producing seed pods. They eventually continue their walk and see a tall building that has been covered with the same fungal structure they saw earlier.
Do you want a cat?
Caldwell also sees the seed pods and says that the fungus must have produced many of them. She adds that if they were to open, they would release airborne spores that could potentially lead to the end of the world. Shortly after, they continue walking and see a mobile lab in the middle of the city. Caldwell tells Parks how to get the door to open, and after he does as he's told, they all enter the lab. While Parks tries to use the radio inside to contact Beacon, Kieran suggests going out for a supply run to see if he can get them some food. As Parks says he can go, Melanie starts feeling uncomfortable because she's also angry and can smell the soldiers. She then tells Parks to let her go out to find something to eat before she gets the urge to hurt them. Parks agrees to let her leave, and she quickly runs around before finding a bird to eat. Meanwhile, as Kieran is walking around the city,
I can smell all of you.
one of the young Hungries in the area sees him but doesn't attack him. Surprisingly, Melanie senses that there are others like her in the area, and as she enters a nearby supermarket, she sees one of the kids telling the others about Kieran. As they leave to find him, Melanie quickly heads back to the mobile lab. Before she gets there, Helen sees that Caldwell is feeling more pain in her hand, and she asks if she can help with changing the wound's dressing. Caldwell says there's no use because the cut has been infected, and she's now dying of sepsis. Helen feels sorry for her, but as Caldwell asks if she can have Melanie, she says she won't let that happen. Caldwell tries to convince her to change her mind, and she mentions that she'll make it as painless as possible for Melanie. Before Helen can respond, Melanie enters the lab and tells them that some hungry kids are going after Kieran. Parks looks shocked to hear this, but Melanie says they need to go and save Kieran. As Parks wonders how to deal with the situation, Beacon suddenly contacts them through the radio in the lab.
Here, copy?
Unfortunately, though, the person who speaks to Parks tells him that they're currently trying to evacuate their people from the city because it won't be long before the Hungries get to them. Parks cannot believe this, and as he thinks of what to do, Melanie tells him to leave the radio and follow her to find Kieran. Meanwhile, Kieran sees some cans on the floor, which lead him into a nearby store. Unfortunately, it turns out to be a trap, and the kids kill him inside there. After a while, Melanie Melanie tracks Kieran to the store, and they see his things outside. As they then enter the store, they confirm that Kieran has been killed. Helen says that the kids likely set a trap for Kieran, and as Melanie thinks about it, she realizes that they've also been led into one. When she heads out, she sees the kids waiting for Helen and Parks to come outside. Parks then brings out his gun to scare them, but Melanie tells him to put it down. She then confronts the other kids, and as one of them attacks her, she knocks him out with a punch. The leader of the group doesn't seem scared by her, and he tries to beat her up. Luckily, Melanie gets the better of him and eventually kills him, much to the surprise of Parks and Helen. After this, Melanie tells Helen and Parks to pretend to be scared of her so that the other kids will think she has already claimed them as her food. Just as they do this, they're able to leave the scene, but when they get to the mobile lab, they see that the door is open. They don't seem to understand why Caldwell opened it, but as they enter the lab, they realize that the doctor has filled the room with anesthetic gas. As Helen, Parks, and Melanie then pass out, Caldwell takes off her gas mask. Before she does anything else, the infection on her hand gets worse, and as she tries to treat it again, she notices that Melanie has already woken up. As she's about to pick up a weapon, Melanie advises her against it because she's much faster than her. She adds that she can also hold her breath for a long time, and Caldwell realizes that the fungus in her system metabolizes oxygen for her.
And it's up to you.
Caldwell then tells Melanie to let her develop the cure that will save a lot of people, including Helen and Parks. Melanie asks if she can really do it, and Caldwell says she can. As Melanie thinks about it, Caldwell asks if she would like to see Helen turn into a monster. Melanie says she doesn't want that, and Caldwell tells her that she's the only one who can give Helen a safe and better future. Melanie says they can just go somewhere else, but Caldwell doesn't think that will help if the seed pods eventually open. Melanie says the pods are hard to break, but Caldwell mentions that they react to heat and would open if there's a fire in the area. As she insists that running away from London is not a good idea, Melanie asks if Helen will know what she did. Caldwell then says she'll make sure Helen knows that Melanie did it for her. Following this, Melanie agrees to sacrifice herself for the cure, and Caldwell tells her to lie down on a table. As Melanie is about to take off her shoes, she asks if she and the second generation of Hungries are very much alive and well, unlike the first generation, who only became zombies after they died. Caldwell says they are, and Melanie suddenly wonders why they're the ones who have to sacrifice themselves to make other people live well. Caldwell looks shocked to hear this, and Melanie tells her to remain inside the lab if she wants to be safe. As she heads out and locks the lab, Caldwell follows her but is soon attacked by the hungry kids, who kill her instantly. Following this, Melanie heads to the building with the seed pods and sets it on fire. As the pods open, the spores start spreading in the area, and Melanie walks back to the lab. Before she gets there, she sees Parks looking for her while he's struggling to breathe in the infected air. Melanie looks shocked to see him, and she asks why he left the lab.
I'm sorry, Sergeant.
He says that he came to look for her, but Melanie doesn't get why he would do that. As she asks about Helen, Parks says she's still in the lab. He then asks what's in the air, and Melanie tells him what she did. Parks can't believe this, but since he knows he'll turn into a zombie because he has inhaled the infected spores, he gives Melanie a gun and tells her to kill him. Melanie doesn't want to do this, but as Parks is about to turn, she shoots him. She then heads back to the lab and sees Helen just behind the door. As Helen looks at the surroundings, she realizes that the spores have now infected the air. She can't seem to believe this, but as she places her hand on the door, Melanie also does this and looks relieved that Helen didn't come outside. A while later, Helen remains inside the pod and sheds a tear as she thinks about the things that happened. Suddenly, Melanie comes to the door to get her attention, and Helen brings a board to the entrance. It then turns out that Melanie has brought all the other kids together to sit in front of the mobile lab so that Helen can teach them like she used to do at the military facility. After Melanie gets them to sit down quietly, she asks if Helen can tell them a story, and she says she'll do that later if there's time. Melanie then smiles as she tells Helen not to worry because there'll be lots of time. After being confined to a military facility from a young age, Melanie starts to believe she's a monster, despite Helen's efforts to make her feel normal. Just as the facility gets attacked by hungries, Melanie realizes that she and the other kids are test subjects in an experiment being conducted by Caldwell. Before Melanie gets killed, Helen protects her and takes her along on a journey to a safe location in London. Caldwell still tries to get her to sacrifice herself for the cure, but as Melanie realizes that she's indeed normal, she opens the seed pods and gets the world to turn into a place only habitable for hungries like her. But do you think she made the right decision? Or could she have just accepted Caldwell's offer?